Welcome back to Ride JBI. This is JB. Today we finished a shock revalve and custom build on this 2023 KTM 300SX. This is the stock production 2023 WP linkage shock. This is the generation 3 of this WP linkage shock. It first came out in 2011. And then it got updated on the 2015 and a half factory edition models and became standard production on the 2016 models, the Gen 2. And then this Gen 3 version came out on the 2022 and a half factory edition models, and then on 2023 on the production models. We have another video on our YouTube channel that details the updates of this Generation 3 shock compared to the previous Generation 2 shock. This shock was revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec. Ride JBI has been spending a lot of time testing the new KTM and Husqvarnas with their all-new chassis, all-new shock, and minorly updated forks. When referencing the stock settings and hardware of the 2023 KTM and Husqvarna motocross and cross-country models. A common media narrative is that the new 2023 frame is overly stiff and makes for a rigid feel of a bike and chattery at the wheels when the bike goes over small to medium size consecutive bumps. These are the type of bumps you often see when you exit a corner and accelerate out. At Ride JBI, we've been working really hard, testing a lot of different setups to improve the rider comfort, or a better way to put it is the bump response of the suspension. So that way the rear shock and the rear wheel has a more comfortable feel as you exit out of corners, thus making the chassis feel less rigid. In our opinion, it's not too much of a chassis issue. It is more of the chain tension issue that they have with the lowered placement of the countershaft sprocket being lower than the swing arm pivot bolt. This puts a lot of tension on the chain as the swing arm goes through its motion, and this creates a damping effect, and not in a good way. So it's recommended to run your chain slack at least 66 millimeters. We think a good spec is between 64 and 68. Quite a bit more than previous models. But what this does is help minimize that effect, because that unwanted damping of the chain tension is a main culprit of the shock feeling harsh and chattery over small bumps. Now, there are some ways that we can valve around that internally, and that's what we've been working on here at Ride JBI, and we think we've done a good job at doing so. And also improving the bottoming resistance of the shock too. In stock form, some riders, but not many, thought the shock was a little bit on the soft side. So we also figured out a way to update the valving to have a little more bottoming as well. So think smoother on the small bumps, more bottoming resistance for the high impacts and jump landings. As you can see, we utilize the JBI suspension bladder kit. That is this gold cylinder here. And then this customer went ahead and had the cap changed to a black anodized color. Usually this cap is red, but we took our red one and sent it out to be anodized black. We did that at the same time while having the rebound clevis, this piece anodized black, and also the shock upper mount, this piece as well. The shock body has been Kashima coated, and the shock shaft has been DLC coated. Got a nice black shock spring to match. We updated the spring seat holder, this piece here, to be made out of metal. It is also anodized black. This replaces the stock plastic one. And we also updated the preload collar from a plastic one to a black anodized metal one. We do this mostly for durability long term. Obviously, aluminum is much stronger than plastic. That's probably not going to get weak over time due to UV exposure and sun. And also they were black, so they matched the shock build / color scheme that the customer wanted. So it fit perfect. I think this shock looks really bitchin', and what's cool is as awesome as the shock looks, the shock is going to perform equally as well, and that is the important part. That's why I really enjoy building a lot of these cool looking suspension setups, because a lot of effort goes into the settings that we develop for these suspension settings. And it's rad when we get the opportunity to make our suspension really stand out and shine, because we feel like it performs just as well as it looks. This was revalved to our JBI suspension motocross spec. Again, it's going on a 2023 KTM 300SX. The front forks received a JBI spec WP Exact Pro 6500 kit, which I'll detail in another video. You can find detailed information of our JBI suspension bladder kit, that is this piece here, on ridejbi.com. We also have a Kashima coating webpage on our website that goes into details on what Kashima coat is, how it works, and the cost. And we also have a JBI suspension DLC coat product page also that talks about the JBI suspension DLC coat that we offer. Again, that is this black coating on the shock shaft right here. And lastly, there is a JBI suspension Anodize page, which shows some previous anodized work we've done in the past on previous shock builds. We like to call these JBI suspension revalve and custom builds. The reason I like to do that is because these builds take more effort and time than a standard revalve. During a standard revalve, we're not always removing the shock cylinder from the shock upper mount or removing the shock shaft from the rebound clevis assembly, because that's not really needed. And then you just got to really take your time when you build these custom ones, because you don't want to scratch it. We got it looking so good. We spent all this time getting everything coated and processed. Now when it comes to the assembly time, you really got to use rags, clamp stuff safely as we assemble it to the really high torque values a lot of these pieces are at, such as remounting the shock body to the upper mount. That's a very high torque value item. And also retorquing our shock shaft to our rebound clicker assembly / shock clevis. Here at JBI Suspension, we have developed and tested and tuned many suspension settings for this new WP 2023 linkage shock. We have developed settings for all the various different types of off-road riding. We have settings for motocross, supercross, arena cross, and freestyle motocross. If you like Ride JBI to do your suspension, please give us a call or send us an email. We can discuss the year, make, and model bike that you have, which options are available, and which setup would be most advantageous for you. All JBI suspension services and parts can be found at ridejbi.com.